I believe that commercial arrangement, commercial model, which sits between partners, consultants, and clients, actually has a huge prediction power to explain where it will go. It will be a one-night stand or it will be a marriage.
Do you want a virgin or someone with experience? Well, I would argue that you want someone with experience. Well, yeah.
Today's number is 8,000. That's roughly how many Dynamics partners exist globally, which is a slightly awkward question. If there are 8,000 partners, why do so many projects still feel like it's one-night stand? So today we're talking about contractors VC partners, when you're just buying hands and when you're actually buying some accountability. So the topic will be today's, are we talking about one-night stands when you're dealing with a partner or you're getting in some form of marriage? And this analogy is very juicy, very spicy. So let's crack on. So what do you think a relationship usually with partners is? And I'm saying usually, let's not talk about what the general common sense tells us, what our experience is. Do you see, when you look at your competitors, is it usually one night stand or it's everyone's trying to get some form of marriage, if we can use this terminology here, but I think we can use it. Arich, what do you think?
So I introduced this topic as something for us to discuss on this podcast, and we were all giggling before we started recording because we may need to censor certain things. But the analogy, I think, fits really well, right? Because when you're a client and you're looking to pick the right implementation company, let's call it that, or a project that you're looking to do, you could go either for a Microsoft partner or you could go for independent consultants. In some cases, it's an either or, so you can't do both. But there's also the option to do both. So you have, and I've definitely been on projects where our client has had independent consultants as part of their project team, and they work with us as well. Less often, in a lot of cases, that isn't the case, and we are a Microsoft partner that comes in and does the project. What I would say is the answer, I think, for me depends on the situation that you find yourself in as a Microsoft client. So if you're going to have a large multi-year program, you may want to go for a partner rather than a independent consultant, purely because of the scale of it, the governance that's needed. You may have multidisciplinary teams that need to be involved. You may internally have consultants, but from an implementation perspective, you may not want to have a consultant doing it. You may want a partner to give you the right support you need. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is you're just delivering some small kind of medium complexity delivery piece of work that requires hands-on work, but it's fairly short. You could use an independent consultant for that. It's more efficient, lower overheads, because Microsoft partners coming in and being involved, we're not the cheapest, right? If we have to consider that. You could use an independent consultant for that. And also if you need niche expertise or it's a supporting role, so you need an SME with really deep knowledge, independent consultants absolutely bring that. And also just in terms of needing speed and flexibility, consultants may well be a better fit for that. But where partners come in for me is those kind of large programs. If you need Microsoft funding, vouchers, fast track alignment, partners tend to have access to those official programs more than consultants do. If you require support, 24/7 support, that may not be something consultants can give you. And in some cases, partners are the only option if you are in a regulated industry or it's an industry where you need certain certifications or compliance, generally requirements are something that you need. So Microsoft partners may well have that. So it really depends, I think, on what really your situation is. And I don't think it's an either or. It's a case of being aware that you've got access to both partners and consultants, and it's identifying the situations where one is a better fit than the other, and knowing that they can work together as well.
Yeah. Do you have an opinion where each consultant or partner is a bad fit? What's the size of the project? What's the goal should be when partner is irrelevant? And the same thing when consultant is irrelevant.
Short-term specialist support, consultants are exceptional at this and better than partners in some cases. If you want to review your architecture or if you want to do a quick solution design where that doesn't need deep expertise in a number of different areas, but a specific area, I think consultants are excellent at that, right? If it's an advisory role, excellent to have consultants on that. Of course, they're cost efficient, right? As well. So we need to consider the fact that partner resources and the rates are a consideration. You wouldn't have the layers that partners introduce necessarily, and they can start much quicker potentially than partners can as well, depending on their availability. So we need to consider the fact that they bring a lot of flexibility that partners may not necessarily bring. I know that you said accountability in terms of partners having accountability, whereas consultants not having it. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that sometimes clients will prefer consultants because they know exactly who's working on the piece of work that they're looking to do. Sometimes they're quicker to communicate, and they can potentially work much better with their internal team, depending on what those consultants are trying to do. It's a bit more of a personalized experience than with a partner, because we have specific processes we take all of our clients through, whereas a consultant will do different things depending on the client that they're dealing with. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. So a partner is not always the right choice, because they can add unnecessary complexity. You know, if you have a very short project, for example, you start working with a partner, we may have lengthy contract processes. God knows they sometimes take a very long time. Our resources rotate, so there may be a gap between you signing a statement of work and us starting. We have a certain methodology that we would use that you may not agree with necessarily, that we want to run the project a certain way in some cases, whereas independent consultants wouldn't have any of those issues, right? That they can do proof of concepts, they can do discovery very quickly. They often rescue troubled projects as well. It really, sometimes they can come in and really rescue a company that is really struggling, or where an SME has left internally in their IT department and has taken all their knowledge with them. They can come in and assess things very, very quickly and provide that really necessary support. So there is space for both, in my mind. I think we should do it the other way around, right? When is an independent consultant bad? Because this is the where independent consultants help, but where are partners really needed?
Yeah.
Because we all effectively represent partners here, so we have a bit of a vested interest. But
we do. I mean, I do have a couple of examples for consultants, and just to set terminology, we're talking about partners as in Microsoft partners, who are, those bigger companies, and with consultants, we're talking about freelancers, individual consultants, indies. I have 3 examples in mind that I think where consultants are a good fit. First one is, if you have just listened to, assuming that this episode airs after our licensing episode, I don't know, but we in our licensing episode where we're talking about ALM and discovery and ideation and solution architecture and what's licensing's role in solution architecture, I think as part of that process, you might have a consultant doing analysis on what you think you need. So doing during that procurement phase, helping you out with your requirements and whatnot. That's a pretty classical example of consultants. Other example that I could think of is training. Your partner might be good at training, but they might not be a training partner. You might have some consultants out there that are really brilliant in training, for example, marketing or a specific app, a specific solution. So training would be another example. And the third one would be if you have, let's say, a friend of mine is a brilliant fabric architect, right? He doesn't work for a partner, yet he's always in demand. He doesn't go into projects on his own for some reason, but rather he goes through partners. So he's known, yet he tends to subcontract for a partner and get into big enterprise fabric engagements through that. Then again, we do have some people in Finland that you might very well know. Vesa Tikkanen, for example, who's a brilliant fabric architect, works on his own as an independent and goes and advises customers and does not go through partners. But I think already really well kind of outlined all the things that I could think of, essentially accountability, continuity, continuous design, managed services, support of your solutions, these kinds of things.
Talking about accountability, if a customer structures the project that it's, for example, a fixed cost project, and the mindset, when it's done, you're going to be gone. We're trying to stop as soon as possible. If you'll deliver sooner, we'll release you sooner. Then what you actually create, you create an environment where the delivery side will look for the next opportunity.
Yes.
In this case, long-term relationship or long-term accountability cannot be one-sided. I think, Areti, that the analogy we use that between, relationships, it's really relevant. It cannot be one-sided commitment, while many customers expect exactly that.
I think it's fair to say, I want to generalize, if we do a bigger project, ironically, we don't do huge projects because we're about 30, 35. Nevertheless, if a partner does a project, what they want, if they have continuous services to offer, they will want that continuous services agreement with you. And the reason for that is because monthly recurring revenue is extremely important to Microsoft partners versus just doing something fixed price. And it has to do with your company, the partner's valuation and how things work and how far out they can prospect and analyze their business and forecast their business. So if a partner, when they're starting a project with you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, if they don't get that recurring revenue contract for continuous services with you, they will move on to the next project after hypercare. You better believe that. So it depends on what kind of relationship you're able to build with them. These days, if we're thinking about the Power Platform, you out there should have a platform partner. It doesn't mean that the platform partner does everything. You might have a couple of partners. Today's partner ecosystem and what we're in operates in a multi-partner, multi-vendor model. It does not mean that one of your partners sits in a Cuck chair and watches the other partner.
Yeah, exactly. I believe that commercial arrangement, commercial model, which sits between partners, consultants, and clients, actually has a huge prediction power to explain where it will go. It will be one night stand or it will be a marriage. To align, I'll reference the white paper we put together a couple of years back. And if you'll Google for my name and you'll Google for the subscription as a service, they talk exactly about that. We compared different options, fixed cost, time and material, ticket-based managed services to subscription model, which is pretty much like what Antti you're referring, retainer. And I'm a huge fan of last one, the subscription, the retainer model. We managed to switch so many customers to that model. It's not always an easy conversation, but there is always upside. Retainer is usually a little bit cheaper than everything else. The main thing, if you look at the beyond our space, how lawyers used to work for decades, how accounting works, marketing companies, if you're not coming with retainer, they have it on their website, how much you're going to spend a month, every month for some time. And that mindset that we have in our Power Platform space, in dynamic space, that is usually borrowed from application development when we had mobile website development, when you had a project and you don't need it anymore. You're done your website, you're not going to update. Yeah, you're going to maintain. It's more like a ticket management system. And Power Platform is something else. It's a completely different system. It's a system which you probably will be a backbone of your company. And that's, I think, again, referring to the other episode we had. We all work on assumption. We love Power Platform. We assume it's critical component to your company. And that's the core case. If you don't think it's a critical component, it's very unlikely you're going to have a retainer, and it's very unlikely you're going to have the best partner. I mean, you might have a good partner if you're paying well, but it's very unlikely you're going to have a committed relationship. And if you're approaching it with this mindset, it's not a critical platform, I'm not going to commit long term, but where is my accountability? Why, guys, you're always providing me something quick and you always disappear? That's on you. Pretty much. And maybe you need to be ready for that. Maybe you, the person, or you're the company, you're the service delivery manager who doesn't need long-term relationship. And that's fair. And then maybe if you plan for, again, one night stand, and it's, I'm going into weird space now, it's consensual, then you're happy, you're fine.
We're all good with that.
That's how you navigate. And it's irony you cannot expect. It could be one-sided. And irony, and by the way, we need to talk about the other scenarios where customer is committed and partner is just thinking, okay, I'm going to promise the world, but the contract is not big. Monthly commitments are not as high, and I'm close to win another one. And I had a story with our Polish friend. I'm not going to mention his name so you wouldn't figure out what the story was, but he was talking about big vendors in our space. Everyone knows that name and that company. And they sometimes come into a contract just to win, just to promise the world, because they need to address a 60 or 100K target to achieve a bonus. And they know they're not going to deliver. They know it will not work. Customer sounds happy. They had the biggest partner in the world almost and have this small fee to pay. And it's all going to collapse because a person who was managing all of it, he had a bonus to win. So it could be one-sided. You can, as a customer, to be fair, as a service delivery manager, you can commit. You be ready to have longer relationship and be careful what the other side thinks. Yeah, I think the relationship thing, definitely works here. But what do you think? Do you see any other reasons? So I covered the commercial angle. So arrangement, which can be a huge force defining the outcome of relationship. Do you see any other signs and signals? And what's the pullers and levers for service delivery managers to have accountability?
I think when it comes to picking the right, either whether it's a consultant or a partner, I think the important thing is that your dating profile states exactly what you're looking for and you do not misrepresent what you're in for. Because if someone is looking for a long-term relationship and you're looking for a one-night stand or, a fling or just a let's date and see where it goes, that's fine, but you need to be very clear as to what you're looking for. So as you said, there will be companies that are looking to bring a partner in, not as a strategic decision in terms of having that trusted partner long term. They may just be saying, this is the project we want to do. We want you to come in, do it, and then go. I think it's very important to be clear because different partners will be aiming for different things. Some might be looking at strategic partnerships because that is what they do and this is what they aim for. And others might be more on the short-term projects or a specific type of project as well. So it's important to identify what are you looking for in terms of their specialisms. Can you meet their team before agreeing for the project to start? Because a lot of the time there will be the people that you interact with may not be the people that are actually going to be doing the project with you. And the fit matters, right? Who's going to be working on your project matters. So you can ask for team profiles. You can ask for the certifications they have. What have they worked on before? You know, it can all obviously be under NDA and things like that. But I think it's important to know what you're getting into. Who are you actually going to be dating? Do you actually know? Because a lot of the time, you know, clients will agree to the project being done, but they don't actually know who's going to actually be working on the project. And I think it helps to try and meet the team in advance, and partners should be able to get you to meet the team in advance, or at least let you know who they're expecting to work on the project. A lot of the time that can be conditional based on when you're going to sign, because the thing with partners is that, you know, we have a resource pool, so we know when people are going to be available. So depending on when you sign, we know who will be available and we know who's going to be there. And the other great thing with partners as well, compared to consultants on that resource perspective, is that if one of our resources is not available for whatever reason, you know, compassionate leave, they have to go, something happens to them, chances are the team is big enough that you will have someone else with similar skills and experience that can jump right into that role and continue the project. If you've got an independent consultant and that happens, it's very difficult to deal with, and you know, life happens. So you get a lot more resource continuity and certainty with partners. But it is very important to actually have be very open about what you're looking for and knowing what matters to you when you're actually evaluating who's the right fit for you. And
Yep.
and sorry, the only other thing I was going to say was we all need to be aware that it's a competitive market, as in life, so in professional life. You know, people cheat, people run off, people ghost you, right? We've all been, well, I say we've all been there. People have been there, right?
All been there. Yeah, that's life. Yeah.
That's life. So we need to be aware that it's basically a competitive environment, right? Your Microsoft partner, you won't be their only client. For your individual independent consultant, you will likely not be their only contract. So there needs to be that recognition as well, and that your client as well will be reviewing Microsoft partners, and other Microsoft partners will be trying to steal them away from you as well. There is that element of building trust and building that knowledge of your client. That's very important for Microsoft partners, or should be anyway, to get to know that organization, know the people who work in it, and understand what they're trying to achieve and help them achieve it. If I was to summarize it, for me, where a Microsoft partner is better is if you are looking to have large mission critical delivery, basically.
Yes.
Because it gives you that support and that continuity.
Yes.
Where you need specialized or rare expertise that maybe only partners might have. So, you know, certifications across multiple parts of the stack, or pre-built IP, or escalation paths into Microsoft, or partner-only programs that are relevant. And yeah, just the kind of the management of it and the risk mitigation of it, if there's things like, you know, cybersecurity or liability coverage or ISO certifications that are needed, partners are, you know, a great fit for that. But again, it comes back to cultural fit as well. Is whoever you're going to be working with, do they work in the same way as you as an organization? Do they have the same values? Do they understand what you're trying to achieve and looking to work with you in a similar way? Because there's 8,000 Microsoft partners for a reason.
With, you know, values and, you know, cultural differences, what I think a service manager or delivery manager might want to consider is if they are buying something from a partner, whether it's a project or whether they're looking for someone to be their platform partner, where is that work coming from? If you're in the Nordics and you work with a partner in the Nordics, most likely, you know, you're getting your consultants for that partner from the Nordics. If you're a bigger company and you contract with one of the, you know, bigger companies, the big five, for example, that delivery might come from different corners of the world. And I'm not saying some corners of the world are worse than the others. That's not my place to say. That's not my intent. My intent here is that if you contract a partner, then that delivery might come from a different corner of the world where the culture is different than in your country. And I think subconsciously we all know that. But I think that's something just to be aware of, and then consider that factor with whether or not you want to use a local partner that's a bit more expensive, perhaps, or whether you want to use a local, like an independent consultant for what you're building. You might not want to build a system that operates nuclear machines or life support machines through an independent consultant. You might want to have a partner in that, irrespective of their geo, for that continuity.
We didn't cover two more angles. We have local VC global partners. I mean, let's put it this way, small VC large partners, and in-house, so insourcing or outsourcing delivery. Because those two can be also important factors when you consider. Let's give to our audience a couple of red flags. Let's assume the customer is committed, has the retainer, and has all the good intentions. So how do you identify the other side, the delivery side is not serious? But let's touch base on big partners. We see small partners. Because Antti, what you referred, my understanding, you're talking about hiring locally, and it's usually Western Hemisphere or go to Eastern Hemisphere, and different price points, different experience sometimes. But let's talk even within the country. But let's talk about large companies, small companies, and in-house and outside, and outsource.
Well, I think that whoever the partner is that's delivering anything for a customer, I think key here is to ensure that the project that you are contracting a partner for gets delivered by the consultant that you've agreed upon in your pre-sales phase. And I think this is easier said than done, but we all know the typical hustle of presenting the best consultants on paper and then the delivery being done by juniors. And I absolutely hate that. I despise that. So I think from a procurement point of view, the first thing is to ensure that you know the people who are going to deliver, that you're sort of, I think already we've said it in a previous podcast as well, I believe, that meet the team, meet the teams that's doing the delivery, invest some time in that, and then see if it feels like a fit. Do not accept a scenario and a situation where you're given, a stellar lineup on paper and CVs, and then you're handed 15 juniors. Hey, you get 10 and 5 for free, or some shenanigans like this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think clients can definitely give prospective consultants and partners a hard time before agreeing to date them, or even more marry them, right? So before marrying and signing that contract, I think the important thing is to really know what you can expect and have confirmation of what you can expect, but also know that they're not hiding anything from you either. And what I mean by that is with other consultants or partners, I think the questions to ask from me are similar. A lot of partners will come with case studies from their previous customers. If they don't, that's a bit of a problem, because they should have a bit of a history of good delivery. They should be able to give you references. So you should be able to speak to their previous customers and ask them how that went. Do they have any public case studies of projects that they've done before? Do they have a governance structure that supports the project internally? Do you know how they are working internally to support the project and overseeing it from a quality perspective? So all of those things are things to ask, but even more importantly, I think it would be important to ask them, where has this project gone wrong before with other clients? What problems have there been? What risks do you foresee? If there isn't that obvious view of knowledge and experience there, if they can't answer this, or if they say, oh no, don't worry, all of our delivery is great and we're sure there's not going to be an issue at all, projects fundamentally never ever go to plan. So they should have experience in the things that can go wrong and how they would manage them. And I think those can be very good questions to ask to really understand, what experience does your consultant have? What experience does your partner have? How do they manage it? How do they expect to do things? But also from a scope perspective as well, what isn't in that statement of work? What exclusions are there? Are you going into it with your eyes open in terms of where your change requests are going to come from? The things that you will have to introduce afterwards? Do you know what process they're going to follow? All of these things, all of that information should be information that should be readily available, really, because it's all about the processes that either the consultant or the partner has. In the case of the partner, it should be a lot more formal and documented, really. So I think there's a lot of due diligence to be done. Take it slow. Do your due diligence before marrying someone. The same way as you wouldn't marry someone you met yesterday. Do not rush into it. Take your time.
It happens in Vegas, so I'm sure it happens in our space too.
Yes, and you know what? Consultants are great for marrying them for a very short period of time, and then going, you know what? Let's annul this marriage because this is not what we wanted. But this is the thing. It's really all about figuring this out, right? You can decide to get married to someone. It's a marriage of convenience. There's no real love there. It's just that You need the marriage temporarily for a short period of time. That's fine. As long as it's consensual and there is agreement beforehand as to what they're looking for and what you're looking for, I've got no issues, right? But there needs to be, where I have an issue is where there is an expectation there that there is mismatched expectations, whatever those may be, right? So I think that that's what it really comes down to for me. Know what you're getting into.
So I think what we should do is we should be kind of groom companies and partners, and then do a married at first sight and see how that works, if that project fails or not. So we'll try to, hook up a customer and a partner together and see how it goes. And then if the project fails, no responsibility on us. We just groom them both and make them fit and see how that works. Just like
There's
in
so
that
many
TV
shows we could create here. Yeah, this
Yeah.
would be great TV, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the mindset which people usually apply when they're hiring people, it's a little bit even more applicable to hiring a partner, because when you're hiring a person, you usually assume the person will work forever, almost, preferably. Your list of criteria is a little bit longer, I guess, because, it wouldn't be that easy to fire in some jurisdiction, and you want to have a good fit culturally, etc., not just deliver and done. And when you work with a partner, you assume, okay, they're a separate entity, they're going to be gone anyway. And this kind of mindset leaves you on the hook. Because if you approach, if you want to have a longer relationship, then you probably will tell, okay, are you guys going to come to our office and see our people, or are you going to be all remote or forever? And it's a very good question when you're hiring a person, but with partners, people think it's irrelevant. It's also relevant. And identify all these gaps. I'm thinking how a service delivery manager who is quite new to partner community, how this person can leverage the skills that he already has, he or she has skills hiring partners. And I think the skill you use hiring people for your team is kind of transferable. And another thing which you usually have with employment contract, you have all the clauses, all the agreements, and people are not surprised that employment contract have multiple pages. When you work with partner, don't assume you have 1 or 2 pages, because I don't want to read, it has too many technical details, is good news. It doesn't mean it needs to be 20 pages. Actually, working for the contract, you'll identify things which you'll lose otherwise with happy years. I like the saying happy years. And if you're approaching that with happy years, you will see a lot of, there is a chance you'll get one stand when you expect some accountability.
I'm thinking, one option, how do you get to know your partners? And this is a partial solution, more of an option amongst many. Use the local user groups. Go and meet with people in your local user groups. A lot of times that UG meeting is hosted at a partner. That's what we do, at least in Finland. So you get to talk and speak with those people who work there and other partners as well. Interview them, see what they're like, see what the company feels like before you're making your decision. Obviously, and if you're in a rush, you need to get a partner for a project. That's a different story. But more in general, if you just want to kind of get the lay of the land and kind of do some speed dating, use your UG meetings, your user group meetings for that.
100%. Speed date at user group events, I highly recommend. The only thing I would say, it's networking fundamentally. The only other thing I would say is remember that sometimes relationships don't work, and therefore consider having a prenup, because they are a great thing to have. I think a lot of the time clients may go into a partnership with either a consultant or a partner with the best intentions, but for one reason or another, it doesn't work out. Client goes into financial difficulty, they need to stop the contract, or their resources are not available and they need to pause, or something happens and they need to pause, or something else happens basically from one side or the other. I think before going into it, you need to know how you're going to deal with that situation should it happen. Although no one goes into a relationship to break up and no one gets married to get divorced, it does happen a lot of the time because life happens. So it's important to keep into consideration the fact that you need to have a discussion about that and what it would mean, because 9 times out of 10 it's not needed, but if you do need it, then it's there. The only other thing I would say is we all come into relationships with baggage, as in life, so in consultancy. So clients will sometimes give partners a hard time because their previous partner has, the project failed, they didn't do what they said they were going to do, or they asked for a lot more to finish the project, or they gave them a lot of CRs out of nowhere, or they were treated badly by the previous consultant or partner, it doesn't really matter, and therefore the new partner comes on and there is a whole lot of trauma, and they are already, from before the project has already started, they are being very suspicious and negative, and insecure about whether this is a good idea or not, and they try to create, so many the prenup becomes books, right, of things that need to be considered, even things that are not really things anyone would ever agree to. Before entering this relationship, you agree you will never break up with me. Well, no one really can commit to that, right? So sometimes clients will come into it with a lot of trauma from previous relationships. And what I would say is absolutely have a prenup, but also consider the fact that life will happen and it's all about keeping it realistic. So Auntie then obviously will ask, do you want a virgin or someone with experience? Well, I would argue that you want someone with experience. Well, yeah, because he typed it in the chat, everybody. So I would argue that you fundamentally, we all want someone with experience, right? Unless we are looking to train someone ourselves, which 9 times out of 10 in the professional world, we don't. We want someone we can trust, and you can't trust a virgin. The things you're making me say on this podcast, my God, you can't trust someone that doesn't really have experience. And when it comes to getting external resources into your organization, you need someone with experience fundamentally. So I would say in this scenario, you can't really have someone who's not experienced, because to a certain extent, that is what you're paying the price premium for. But it comes back to who is going to be doing the work, and do they have that experience you're paying for? And it's all about, trusting them, but verifying that as well.
So if you had a single flag, just you need to pay attention. I'm sure there are plenty of flags, but if you'll try to identify top one flag, which tells you I'm for a service delivery manager, that the partner is moving into one night stand, or it's definitely not going to work, what the flag would be. And I'll give my example. I'm curious about your examples. I thought about it a little bit. The clear sign that it's going to not work, no matter what the paperwork, is the project manager you're dealing with needs to get approval for every single turn of events. So the project manager assigned to your project, or the person who's kind of key person, holds the relationship with you as a Miss Customer, if that person is not powerful enough in the hierarchy of organization he works for. And usually Power Platform and Dynamics, they're so tricky, and they're very flexible. You can change requirements. You have your end users coming with new ideas. And if that person cannot tinker with, but he tells, give me a week or give me a day, I need to get an approval, it's very likely at some point the change request, you'll be hit with a big change request bill at some point, because that person didn't have enough leeway or didn't have enough authority to hit up on some bad discoveries or find a clever way to navigate around change requests which are going to come. And I think change request is number one killer of relationship and partner-client, which I retain, I think, really good idea. Like, thank you, Angie, for picking up, because I'm also a big fan of retainer model. If you expect many change requests, and it's by its definition, like in life, going to have a lot of changes, and the other side is not in position to adjust it and goes and get approval from parents, keep using the alternative. And you see every single time parent is in the game, it would not going to work, as in real life. I think that's my take. What's your number one flag? That the relationship is not going to work, even it was promising on the paper initially.
For me, it's just lack of detail, very generic responses, very distracting behavior. So where you're trying to understand what they have done before or what they plan to do, and the answers are very vague and not specific enough. It just shows that either they're trying to hide something, or the experience isn't there to be able to give you those answers. Either way, it's a bad omen, really. Because if you say to someone, what happened in your previous relationship, or, if you're trying to talk about skeletons in the closet and they're suggesting that there's nothing in the closet or there's no closet, that's a problem. Everyone will have good and bad experiences, and it's the honesty of it. If there is such a thing as lying through omission, and if someone is not being open and honest, chances are they're hiding something. So I would say you will be able to tell when there is an answer to your question that you're asking a consultant or a partner, and they are tiptoeing around it and they're not really answering it. That for me is a red flag. So if you say, can we meet the team, for example, and they say, our consultants are all billable resources, they're on projects, we may find it difficult to get them out of those projects, something's up,
Yeah.
and you'll know it. You'll know from the vagueness and the evasiveness that something's being hidden there. You won't know what it is, but the fact that something's being hidden is not a good sign.
Anchi, what's your number one?
I think that is spot on, that number one thing. I'd say another thing is second guessing and everything that's being done. And I think second guessing is one thing that you could, for example, seeing billing second guessing everything that you get an invoice as a customer, and then you start everything is being second guessed. That would be a flag for me. I'm not saying that being precise and meticulous is a bad thing, and paying attention to detail, but you shouldn't second guess everything that's being done.
Yeah, and there should be clarity from either an independent consultant or a partner.
Yes.
What have they done? What has the work gone into? And you have the right as a client to ask for evidence for things. You can ask for timesheets. You can ask for, obviously, there should be reporting weekly on how things are going. Like, you should know what is happening. You shouldn't have to ask what is happening.
Who brings the methodology? I hate that word, but in projects we do have that. Who brings the methodology? Does the customer bring the methodology, or does the partner bring the methodology to the table?
So 2 more topics coming. Watch this space. We'll have career advisory episode, and we'll have methodology, because I think that's a very important thing, and there's so many different methods, and we will debate which one actually works, if that exists at all. Yeah, so Antti, do you want to take us home? You want me to take us home, just to be fair to Areti? To summarize.
I could take it home. So we talked about whether independent consultants versus partners should be used. What are the pros and cons? We kind of landed on the fact that, don't trust virgins, and also, you shouldn't need to consider that caught chair in the corner. That shouldn't be necessary in the multi-partner ecosystem. There are pros to using both independent consultants as well as partners. And there are equal cons or using partners and independent consultants. You need to consider, are you looking for a long-term relationship? Are you looking for a one-night stand? Try to find options for speed dating to get to know both kinds of personas, and then make an educated decision. It's always a leap of faith. Sometimes it's marriage at first sight. We're going to create a TV version and a TV show for of that for partners and customers. And do your due diligence, do your research. Do not just, swipe in whichever direction you swipe on Tinder. I've never been on Tinder, so I wouldn't know.
Right, Antti, right.
All right, right, yeah, I guess, yeah.
I've never been on Tinder either, by the way, just saying.
So don't just swipe right, do your due diligence. In the end, you never know. Just like with relationships in real life, you never know how it works out.
And have a prenup for that reason.
And have a prenup, yes, exactly.